And thank you everyone for creating today's workshop with us.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Tammy. And it's really good to see such a nice, robust group. This is fantastic. So as Tammy said, this is my first time doing something with Rise U. I'm really excited to be here. And this is actually my first time connecting with the larger group as well. So I'm just thrilled that you guys are such a vibrant community. It's very inspiring. So today we're going to be talking about writing our bios, which is in our current language a trigger for a lot of people. Just sort of talking about what we do, how we do it in a positive, enthusiastic way that's clear and concise and impactful. My goal for you guys by the end of this session is we're going to have just it's not a long, we don't have a long time, just an hour, but we're going to do a little bit of writing, but for you to come out with some bullet points of things you want to bring into your bio, some new ways of visioning how you can think and talk about what you do, and with the motivation to come at it from a different angle, and to do like another draft or another take on it soon, like within the week if you can. I know it's the holiday season, but I, like you, go to a lot of programs and workshops and often have a lot of great ideas and then don't put them into motion and into action. So I would encourage you to kind of set an intention now as we get going, for how this can be really practical information and not just theoretical or conceptual, but actually that you take steps to really bring it into your work. So I'm going to be sharing a presentation, and in the middle of the presentation, we will take a few minutes to do some writing, and hopefully everyone will be able to see this clearly. And feel free to chat. And Tammy, Rachel, if you guys might catch a chat question if I don't, but I want to make sure everybody's hearing and seeing everything clearly throughout. Okay. All right, just give me a thumbs up if everyone's seeing that okay. Okay, awesome, excellent. And we will have time for some questions at the end as well. So if you have questions, either type them in the chat or just make sure you write them down so we can cover them. All right, so this is the presentation, How to Write the Amazing Story of You. The subtext here, the tagline, crafting an impactful narrative bio for your marketing and promotion. So I just want to make the point, I think it's important to think about when we talk about ourselves and we're also in business for ourselves, it's not quite the same thing as just sort of saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm up to. You are in fact pitching yourself when you talk about yourself now as a business person. Of course, this isn't going to be appropriate in every context, but in a lot of contexts, you're networking, even if you're not aware of it. So you're at like your kid's birthday party, you're talking about what you do, you're actually networking. And that person could actually be a client or know someone who would be a client. And so there's a kind of shift in that, in how we think and talk about ourselves, which is that we're sort of always on in a sense, because it's not inauthentic, it's real because we're passionate about what we do. We want to present it in a way that's powerful and impactful. So just something to think about. It's a slight shift, and it's particularly with wellness people and I'm a wellness professional myself. I did health coaching and yoga teaching for many years. I'm also a creative. I'm an artist and writer, musician, like Tammy said. So creatives and wellness folks are one thing we don't really do well sometimes is make that transition from like, I love doing what I do to I'm doing this to make money sometimes, at least part of the time I need to make money doing it. We kind of fall into business sometimes. And so this is a more conscious step toward I am in business and this is how I'm presenting myself. So that's a kind of overarching view of some of the stuff we're talking about today. Okay, so here's a little bit about me. I'm a business coach and content creator, like Tammy said, and I specialize in working with women solo entrepreneurs to develop authentic copy and content, that is representative of your voice. It doesn't sound canned, that aligns with their mission and vision. So then a real key word for me is alignment here. As a yoga teacher, I love alignment. That's a big part of what I taught, what I teach. But also when things are aligned, they tend to work better. It's just true. It's alignment makes things actually work better. When we're misaligned, when we have a marketing concept that doesn't fit with who we actually are, we don't feel comfortable with it. We don't want to say it. We don't say it, and it doesn't work out. So alignment is crucial there. I have a master's in fine arts and writing from the University of Iowa, and nonfiction writing. So I've been thinking and talking about writing for a long time, and I've been published in the New York Times and many other magazines and publications. So writing, is writing a strong bio so important? And I just want to give you guys, we can talk more about this, but these are some of the basic ideas behind why I think writing a strong bio is so crucial. You want to be presenting yourself clearly as much as possible. So you want to be able to really give someone a succinct background info, like your succinct background info, as quickly and clearly as possible. That's part of your pitch. So when you go to present yourself, if you don't have that clarity, if you haven't thought through the language and the wording and what you actually want to say, it can often get a little bit muddy. And then someone's like, oh, well, are you this or are you that? Or what are you doing now? Is this what you're doing now? And you want to avoid those questions as much as possible. You want people to just be like, oh, right, I get it. And then you go on to, so, what's up with you? Like, is this something, do you have any health issues that we might talk about? Or like, what's your biggest health concern? And then you can get other people talking, and then that becomes a potential client for you to work with. So, part of it is the clarity of how you present yourself opens the door for other people to present themselves clearly as well. You're establishing your trust and authority. So clients need to know why you can help them. So if you're not presenting that, like, I can help you solve this problem, I can help this get better for you, then they're like, oh, well, that's nice that you're a massage therapist, or, that's nice that you help people with writing or marketing, but they don't necessarily make that connection to how you can help them. And then the next one is, you're modeling what you're selling. And I think this kind of drives me nuts when I'm on calls with folks or I'm talking to people and they're like, yeah, I help people with marketing their business, and they're not looking at you, or they're mumbling, or they're not making contact, or like, I help people eat more healthily. It's like, that doesn't do it for me. Like, I need to see in your face, in your presence, in your voice that you can do this, you can help me out. So you're modeling what you're actually selling. And so that's can be confusing for people, because they think, oh, well, I'm great at Reiki, or I'm great at, whatever I'm doing. So why do I have to, sell it all the time, or why do I have to talk about it all the time? But we don't know each other. We're always reading signs from each other, but we don't know each other. We don't trust each other automatically. So you're building that kind of trust and authority. So having confidence, having presence, and having ease actually speaks quite a bit about what we do and who we are. So as you're talking about yourself, you're actually modeling, what you're offering to them too. It's like, if I can talk comfortably about my work, I can help you talk comfortably about your work. I can help you do your work better, that kind of thing. So it becomes a reciprocal process. So those are some 3 pretty important points. Okay. So now onto a few of the pitfalls. And I was going to say these are pitfalls for women. I think they are in many ways specific to women, but not entirely. So I do think men can fall into these, but men have other challenges with how they present themselves. These are 3 that I think are really significant. The first one is underselling. So this is, I really like this image. I'm no expert, but I mean, haven't we all said that? Even though we've studied, our field for 10, 20, 30 years, maybe. I'm no expert. You actually, often are an expert. So you don't need to say that. You don't need to undermine yourself from the get-go. This top one, the little old me phenomenon, this is actually one that my husband teases me about sometimes, that he hears me talking about something and he's like, oh, little old me, and it's a way of sort of, subtly undercutting yourself. Oh, I did this, but it wasn't that. I won this, but it wasn't, this amazing thing. I got this opportunity, but it wasn't. And sort of like, playing out your neurotic, like what I'm not in your head. But the worst thing is when you articulate that, because you're sharing it with people, you're forefronting it, and then they're kind of confused. But wait, I thought you were really into this, or I thought this was your passion. Why are you telling me why it's not working out or why it's not great? So just really watch that impulse. We all have that impulse, and sometimes it's just saying less. It's sort of saying what you do with enthusiasm and excitement, and then just holding your breath, stopping yourself, drawing it down. What do you do? Or whatever, continuing the conversation. So it can often just be like a kind of creative, conscious self-editing that helps to reduce some of that neurotic bubbling up of I'm not good enough. Similarly with undermining experience. Oh, I was just traveling in Asia, it was just a year, but it was a year. You had that experience, these ways. It's so funny. How I was a teacher, but just for, a few years. You had teaching experience. That's fantastic. That's impactful. So avoiding that kind of, it was only language. And you can think through, I constantly am editing out those words when I talk about myself and my work. And then this last one is actually in some ways more crucial. I was just working with a client who, fortunately, I knew a little bit more about her background, and I was like, Heidi, don't you have a master's degree? Where, we're going over her bio. And she did, and she had not put it into her bio information. And as I interrogated that a little bit, she was like, oh, it's in theater arts, and I'm doing, fundraising and development now. It's like, no. Put it in. I send her links to articles, people with master's degrees make 20% more, just because they have a master's degree. People aren't necessarily going to ask you what it's about. It doesn't matter. You did the coursework. You made that effort to get it. So it's an interesting thing, I think, for women. I actually just spoke to another woman, a consultant friend, has a master's in religion. She's taken that out of her bio. It's really shooting ourselves in the foot. We do all this work, we make all this effort, and then we don't take credit for it. So get those letters next to your name if you have them. Put them in. Don't hesitate. It's really important. And if people want to question you about it, talk to them about it, but you can usually make a case for why what you studied previously set you up to do what you're doing now. Certifications, make sure you're presenting your really powerful certifications, and time spent in the field. This is another interesting one. People often will be like, oh, I've been a yoga teacher, but then I became an acupuncturist. You know what? You've been in the wellness world for 30 years. That's a big deal. You've been multiple decades of work in this world, right? So, whatever it is, you've been teaching. Oh, I taught preschool, but then I taught college, then I taught high school. It's fine. You've been a teacher, you've been an educator for 30, 40 years, whatever it is. You have to be able to make, give people a sense of your commitment to what you've done and what you're doing. So think that through. And this is one that people often neglect. It's like sort of, they think more about their most recent training, their most recent iteration as a professional. But there might be a case to be made of, like when I was thinking about myself as a writing coach and writing and content creator, I thought, wow, I have been doing this. I did this in college. I helped people in the writing center. I've been helping people write for almost 30 years. That's a big deal. And so it's drawing, you have to draw that continuity line in your work. No one will do that for you. So you have to make that case. Okay, another pitfall is sort of the other side of the coin, but it actually stems from the same sort of lack of confidence or presence in what we do. Over justifying. So that's like, oh, I got this degree and I got this degree, and then I did this training and this, and then I did this training. And we all know there are so many trainings we can do for our field. We can get all these different badges and this certification, that certification. And so sometimes it can sort of be neurotic to over recite what we're up to. And I see this a lot on people's websites, their bio. The first thing you see is this bio, and it's like blah 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 blah. And unless you're an insider in that field, I work with a consultant who she's had so many different trainings, but like I don't know what they are, and they're not really relevant to most of her clients. They just want to know, can you help them do a good job search for your nonprofit, or can you help them, build capacity for their organization? That's what they need to know. So every little certification, that doesn't add up for most people. And worse, it creates a kind of a smoke screen to what's most important, which is like, this is what I do. This is what I can help you with. Here's a testimonial of somebody who, knows that I do amazing work. Let's talk. You just want to get really, really clear. So watch out with that kind of. Writers do it too. I see this. Writers, oh, I was published here and here and here, and like 30 different publications, and people just glaze over for the most part. So we have to watch out with that kind of thing. Offering too much information, same idea, so that nothing sinks in. And this is it's just a risk, when you talk, the more you talk, it's like you have to, again, know what you're saying. It's impactful, it's powerful, and then you got to know when to stop and engage the other person. And there's this saying in business and marketing in general: if you confuse, you lose. It's very simple, but it's so true. I mean, if your potential client doesn't know what you want them to do or what you have to offer, they're gone. And this is particularly true with websites. People spend like 2 seconds on a website. It's like something like 7 seconds. They land on a website and they like take it in, and then mostly they're gone. We have such a short attention span now. So confusion is not just an accident. It's something that happens because we don't plan out how we want to talk about ourselves and how we're promoting and pitching ourselves. So confusion is something we want to avoid. And it comes with, really thinking this through in advance. Okay, and pitfall number 3 is what I would call languid language. And this is a particular, for me as a writer, this is an issue for me that I see quite a bit. And it probably bothers me more than other folks because I do editing, copywriting. But I do think that language works on people in unconscious ways. So we're not always totally clear when we are hearing something or reading something, how it's impacting us. But at the end of reading it, we will either buy something or not buy something sometimes, or we will either copy this quote because we really like it or forget it forever. We'll forward it on to somebody because it hits a note with us, or we'll just let it go. So it's that kind of language, skillful language, thoughtful language. It's actually more important than you think. And sometimes it's more subtle than you think. So the first one is, for one thing to think about here is bland, boring, or repetitive language. And so this is just using words that are sort of, they don't have a lot of spark to them. They might be technically the right word, but they are not that compelling. It's the difference between, like, if you think in terms of like a stone and a rock, right? Stone and a rock are the same thing, but stone, when you say stone, it really has a different feel to it, right? That word has a lot of beauty, a lot of sort of presence, and sort of evokes, a rounded stone. Rock has a much more, strong and sort of potentially like aggressive image to it, right? Or idea to it. So stone and rock, a lot of words are like that. They're similar, but slightly different. And you got to pick the right ones and think through the right ones. Repetitive, and this one sort of drives me nuts. People will often, I'll hear them do their pitch and they'll say, I love creating, wonderful travel experiences for women. As I create travel experiences for women around the world, I'm inspired, and my creation of travel or something like that. They just tend to repeat the same verbs or the same words over and over again. And if you have a pitch that's 2 sentences long, no words should really be repeated. No real impactful words should be repeated, because as soon as you repeat them, they lose their impact. You've already heard that before. Whoever you're talking to has heard it before. So it's not going to have the same, it's not going to hit them the same way. So that's something to think about, is the repetition. And if you're not clear on what you're saying, it's easy to repeat. Again, another angle on this is every sentence should give another angle on who you are, what you do, and why they should hire you. So if you have 8 sentences, every sentence, they are coming together. They are one coherent whole, but there are different angles on it. They're different. It's like a prism almost. And you can say the same kinds of things, make it kind of come together coherently, but slightly differently. And that's really important, because again, the level of language that you're using is working on the person you're talking to. They are hearing it, they're taking it in, and they're either saying, I get this. This makes sense. This is really this is resonating with me, which is what you want. Or like, I'm not really sure what that means. I don't really know. And as soon as you get that like iffiness, then you're confusing, and then you're losing potential client. And then this is one that we all fall into, is using industry words that can't be understood by the average person. And this can be like, in the corporate world, there are all these words that people use, like siloed, and, there's certain like expedite and like kind of technical words. And sometimes you can kind of understand them. Other times it's just like, it's like they say legalese or something, or corporatese. But there's also can be like a kind of wellness ease, that we go into, like using the word energy, not to just mean like feeling energy in your body, but like a larger energy field. A lot of people won't understand that. They won't get it, or they'll think, oh, that's too far out there for me. So you have to watch out with like, when you go into certain language that's vague or has really big conceptual ideas, that it doesn't start to confuse your potential client and they get further and further away.
Katherine.
Yeah.
Can we pause for a sec just to workshop this a little?
Yeah.
I'll just talking about Rise. This is something I think we fall into this category about industry words. And when we talk about retreats, we use the word, even just the word retreat,
yes,
means something different to everyone. And also the word wellness. And I realize everyone has different industries, but I'd be curious if we could just pause and for 60 seconds, play that out a little. Like, how do you avoid the industry word that may be off-putting and because for us, we believe it's for all women, all self-identifying women. So how do we send that invitation out there?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Tammy. I'd be so curious what people's thoughts are on that. Yeah, Patricia.
Hi there. Great presentation. What I was thinking in words, using words in general, even writing or talking or presenting yourself, I think about what happens with this sort of overall like industry. We'll use that word, industry language. I find if I actually can just break down to say, what do I really want to say or communicate directly to this person? And I find it's actually more authentic to think about what you want to say and communicate that, because then these sort of words off the top, as the in quote kind of words, and there's plenty of them. That's what we're sort of talking about. I find that it ends up being the right thing. Like I remember being at a party and someone said to me, I said, someone was saying, "Oh, that's awesome," or this is so, something. And he said, use your words. So instead of having like this overall umbrella word or concept, you actually truly think of what you're trying to communicate. And when you say that, you become clear.
Yeah, I think that's a really, that we do have a tendency to just kind of use a blanket word, but if you can like drill down a little bit more and say more specifically what what you're helping somebody with, what you're doing with them. Yeah, I have a client who is a love and intimacy mentor, and the way she was talking about her work was in these sort of grand terms of healing and supporting, and that's beautiful, and that's important. But a lot of people are going to be like, I don't need to be healed. I just need to have a better, relationship with my partner, and have more and have more pleasure and enjoyment from that. And so the healing step is something you might do in your sessions with your client, but it might not be necessarily what you forefront in your bio or how you talk about your work.
So it's Marissa. Can I just comment on what Tammy said? Because
Yeah.
I really think you're right, because this was my first Rise weekend and my first joining in Rise. And I was looking for something, right? I was out there like looking at all these wellness, women's wellness. And this was so incredibly different than going someplace and eating lettuce and meditating all day or whatever. It's like, it is like, I also learned on this weekend that self-care can be about getting a massage, but it's really not about getting a massage. It's about refilling your well and doing all these things that are interesting and engage your intellect and write about yourself, learn about yourself. So I can definitely see the challenge of positioning Rise differently than a retreat or a wellness weekend or what have you. So I don't know if I have anything to offer in terms of what that should look like, but I can very clearly see the difference.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Maybe it's
Okay, Tammy.
brainstorming writing. I don't know.
Tammy and Rachel.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
ahead.
Marissa, were you done?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Okay, perfect. I think actually the way you market is perfect. I think Rise Gathering, just the fact that in your title it says gathering, it doesn't say retreat, it doesn't say spa, it doesn't say anything like that. It's a gathering. It's a gathering of women, and it's spot on. I wouldn't change anything, to be honest with you. I think it's very cohesive the way it is. You touch on every single point, and variety is probably the only word that I might add in there, because there is a variety. Whether you want to heal or whatever your goal is, you will get it at Rise. You will, regardless of what it is. You absolutely will. It's just hard to make that all encompassing. So I think variety would probably be the word that I would add in there if that's of any kind of help to you. But otherwise, I think it's spot on the way it is. It's in your title, gathering. That's what it is. It's a gathering. It's a weekend gathering.
Thank you. And
Always.
thanks. This is definitely not a workshop about telling the story that is Rise Gatherings.
Well, you can always feel free to contact me separately if you want to have a chat about it.
Also, what it's making me think of for everyone here is that I always, because besides doing retreat work, I'm also a somatic practitioner. So even just telling people that, I lose them immediately because most don't know what even the word somatic is. So what I think of is how to speak to a layperson for anyone if they're not in a certain profession.
Mm-hmm.
And how do
you wait a second, it's the way that we get terms to become more common by using them and educating people as to what they are. For example, when Katherine said silos, and I nodded my head, yeah, I'm in corporate, I understand silo, but I wind up explaining it to a layman so that they're educated, so that when they hear it from somebody else, they know what they're referring to. So these terminologies wind up becoming more ingrained and more common. It's like intuitive healer instead of psychic. It's changing the terminology, but then explaining it so that it becomes more common. So you don't want to necessarily change it. You want to expand on it. That would be my 2 cents. But again, my offer still stands if you'd like to meet separately.
All right, thank you guys so much. That's super helpful, and this is a great, lively conversation. And I do think it's is it Vanessa's point, language does shift, and words that weren't familiar do become familiar. But sometimes it's asking how much you want someone to have to work, and if it's something that they should just know right away, or you can just, or if they, or if it's something you can get into a little bit more. So you have to kind of bridge that balance. Okay, let's keep moving on, because I want to make sure you've got a few minutes to work on your own bios. Okay, so when the just right bio, so like if you think of it, it's like, oversell, undersell, just right. What's the just right bio for you? It uses language that feels authentic. And again, we talked about that at the beginning, but words and language that feel authentic and aligned with who you are and what you want to present to the world. Doesn't oversell what you're up to and doesn't undersell it. And that is, again, it's this fine line to walk. And if you see in the background, it's the middle path here between the cornrows. And that's what we're trying to hit, is a middle path. And it's clear and concise. So there are not a lot of extra words. You don't find yourself rambling, but also you don't find people kind of giving you a blank stare of like, wait, what is that you do? And how does that work? So, I think that it's just good to talk about what you do and talk to everybody about it. Like, talk to the person you meet on the corner, and talk to the person who, is, you're at your kid's school, and, anybody, you're not just your friends and your family, but strangers, because your friends and your family want to understand you. They want to know what you're up to. Strangers don't necessarily. They're just going through their day. So they're actually great people to talk to and see, like, who lights up when you describe what you do, and who kind of shuts down. It's kind of like doing market research, but just with, humanity. And I just say to people, my clients all the time, tell everybody what you're up to and see how they respond. Okay, so before we go on to different bios for different contexts, which is what we're going to talk about in the second half, let's just we're just going to take a couple minutes and just grab a pen and paper and write down, based on what we've talked about already so far in this workshop, anything that you can think of that you should change about your bio or add to your bio. And don't censor yourself, just kind of any notes, any ideas, anything that's like, wow, that has been missing, or this is language that I don't know if people really understand it. Whatever it is that has sparked you, write that down now. So let's just take a couple minutes. It's 10:38, so we'll just go to like 10:41. Okay. So does anyone want to share any insights that they had and some things that they're going to change about their bio? Just a couple folks. And apologies, I can't see all the screens. So Tammy, maybe you could see if there's anyone who's raising their hand. Oh, Jill?
Yeah. Well, I was also going to say, if you want to stop sharing for a second so people can see, it's up to you.
Oh yeah, right.
I don't know if you can see the chat. Kari asked, which I think she may have just asked it to me, for the bio for all seasons. Eventually, if you have time, can you talk to the difference between your bio for your website, your LinkedIn, your book?
Yeah, that's the next part of things. We're going to cover that for sure.
What's the question for the group again?
So any
share their bio?
insights that anyone had based on what we just talked about, the first part of the presentation, and anything, that you wrote down that you're going to make changes to? I think Jill had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I came in late, but I feel like I came in at the right time, because I'm in the process of planning my first, not going to say retreat, I don't know, I'm going to look for a better word, but for teachers who are just burned out. And I And I think teachers are sick of saying, like, hearing, well, if you just meditate, everything will be fine. So I think I'm gonna like I was thinking, instead of like take a break from the burnout, like you're burned out, like you need a break from it. So like I'm just going to play around with that idea to like acknowledge the fact that they are burnt out, and every once in a while you have to take a break from it. And we're not going to heal you in a weekend and send you back, but just take a break from it. But then I also thought about like my bio, instead of making it like warm and fluffy and all that, like that's not really me. I'm more like, here's the shit, let's get it, this is what it is. And I'm simple and real and down to earth. And I'm definitely going to change my my bio to be more sound like, I want it to sound like me instead of what I think people want to hear.
Yeah. Awesome. That's awesome. Those are both great points. And I love the, like, it's true. I do think one of the risks with like our wellness mentality is we want to fix things and heal things. Like sometimes like we rush to that before we like bridge all the actual nuance and complication to get there. And I think it's so important to just acknowledge like where people are. And if they're like pissed off and burnt out, that's where they are, and that's fine. But that's better to start there than putting like a layer of like, I shouldn't be this way, or it has to change right away, which just doesn't work, So awesome for you to just like give people that space to really be where they are. Yeah. Anyone else had some insights or thoughts on how they might change their bio? Vanessa?
Yeah, I had a quick question, because the bio can be two different ways. Because one is, because I'm in corporate, so I have a corporate bio, and then I have a me bio. And they're completely different. I mean, I can't even figure out a way of blending them in together because of my history. Now, I've been married 30 years, so I have that plus, but then I've also been in a leadership role for 30 years. Any thoughts on merging them, or do I actually keep them separate and it depends on the audience?
Yeah, you know what? I think as we go into the rest of the presentation, we're going to touch more on that. But I know what you mean, and it is something to. Sometimes it depends on who you're presenting yourself to, and you might have separate bios for separate kinds. It's like sometimes you have different resumes for different types of jobs. Sometimes you have to have that. But let's once you get to the end, I think if you still have questions, we can talk about those. But
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anyone else had things that they were able to change right away, or insights that they had? Yeah, Marissa.
So first of all, that was the easiest. I struggle with this so much, like my whole career. And this was the easiest that I got 3 lines together. And I think focusing on, being in insurance for over 30 years. And I've always been hesitant to say, like, I run a specialized line of insurance focused on machinery and equipment. And I absolutely love coaching and mentoring early career professionals. Kind of accomplishes, like, I'm always looking for people because, obviously hiring people right now is brutal. That it's a very specialized line, and Chubb Insurance is a huge company. And I don't know, it was like the easiest. Thank you. This was awesome.
Fantastic. That's so exciting. Yeah, sometimes it just kind of clicks into place. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we realize, like, all that detail we've been thinking, oh, we need to, like, make it sure that people understand. It's like they don't, they often don't need that level of detail. They just like there's in the Story Brand book, I don't know if you guys have read Donald Miller's work at all, but he's a good guru around this area. But he talks about how there was this painting company that was like, oh, well, we paint machinery and we paint, these things. And how do we tell everybody we paint these very specialized stuff? And he was like, you don't just say, like, we paint stuff, and then people can figure it out. Then, but they need to know right up front, what are you up to? Not that you paint, these kinds of doorknobs or whatever. So we get granular in our own work because that's what we do. But it's sometimes when we present and market ourselves, we don't want our granularity to get in the way.
Yeah. So one thing that I think is really interesting, and I just wanted to ask if anyone else, Vanessa particularly, has had this experience, but when you're in the corporate world and you ask a man like, oh, tell me a little bit about your career. They're like, from 1989 to 1991, I did this. And from 91 to 95, I did that. And from this date to this date and this date to this date. And I'm like, oh, I was just wondering if other people had that experience. Like, I just think that's so weird. And I don't know if I should be doing that because that's what they do, you know?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely. For one thing, I also think, and I don't mean to, I'm jumping ahead, I'm sure, with Catherine, you know, it's so much about your bio, about what you've done. What about what you want to do? And what if it's what you want to do is completely different than what you're doing? You know, that's the other thing. I mean, you mentioned, Marissa, which was great, about mentoring newly hired people. Every time I bump into one of my children's friends, I'm like, in 2 minutes, tell me what you want to do. And they, you know, they attempt to, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. Let's say you want to be a trainer for the New York Jets. You want to have a 2-minute elevator pitch where you talk to anybody. I'm going to school, but my goal is to be a trainer for the Jets. Oh, really? My brother-in-law works for the Jets. You have no idea the people that you're going to meet. So you need to be spot on, not only with what you do now, but actually what you want to do. So that's my question as well to Catherine.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's finish up the rest of the presentation. Then we can stick around and maybe we'll finish and then we can hang out for questions a little bit afterwards. I don't know if that works out for you guys, Tammy. But so we make sure we hit a lot of these marks. But I want to make sure there's some important things about really just thinking about all the different kind of bios you wanna have at your fingertips. Okay, I'm gonna go back to screen sharing. Okay, so a bio for all seasons. So this is the basic. Once you know you get the basics down around what kind of, you know, writing a bio and creating a bio for yourself, then of course you have to be adaptable and you have to make it work in different contexts and situations. So it's not, your bio is not a one size fits all kind of thing. Just like, you know, when you meet different kinds of people, you might talk about your work in different ways. So it's important to have some flexibility and some adaptability with that. What's perfect in one place really doesn't work in another. And tone and person, and we're going to talk about that in a second, meaning first, third person, is really key. This is the big question. The $64,000 question is first versus third person. So first person is, of course, speaking from the I perspective. I did this, I did that. And it's often these days when you go to websites, it's often first person. So that's a pretty familiar one, that tone. And it's conversational, it's friendly, it's inviting. This is how we speak. We speak in I, we speak in first person. And it establishes, what's interesting about first person is it establishes empathy and authority, which is both are very important. So you can establish like, I do this, I'm passionate about this. And also the authority of I graduated from these programs and I, you know, have these experiences. You can also tell your personal journey with first person. I healed myself and I can help you too. So that's when you're going deep with your own story and your own experiences and you want to share with people, you know, I have a cancer journey story. This is how I healed myself. I can work with you too. That's first person. Your website and your website homepage and your LinkedIn can be first person, particularly your website homepage, as people are saying, like that's really where you want to kind of like meet people. Essentially, you're meeting someone for the first time, you're having a conversation with them. And this is where you articulate and how you articulate your passion. You know, I love doing what I do. I'm committed to this. So first person tends to be the kind of softer side of things. Although you can get your strong points in there as well. But it's the conversational element, which is really crucial. And then third person is actually kind of different. So if you think about like, it's a subtle shift, but when you go into she did this and she did that, and you know, she graduated from this program and she has had 50 years of experience in this world. Suddenly, this is how other people talk about us. So imagine you're being introduced at a conference, you're the keynote. How are people going to talk about you? That's third person. And that's that slight distancing of things you can't really say about yourself because they sound braggy. You can say them sometimes in third person with more subtlety. So it's more formal, it's more official. This is how people speak about us. It fully establishes your authority, not so much your empathy. It's really not about establishing empathy most of the time. If you're going to tell your healing journey, it's usually not going to be in third person. So your website bio page, which is different from your homepage, when people go to your bio and look for your longer bio, perhaps, that's where you can get into a third person. If you write an article for a magazine or a blog, this is third person. She did this, she did that. And it makes sense, right? It's like, you're presenting something that's more formal in an article written piece. You need to have a more formal sort of explanation of who you are, who the author is. Obviously your book, if you write a book, third person bio, and definitely like a conference presenter, that kind of thing, when people are in that context of you're teaching in a more formal way, that's also third person. It's a way of articulating your skills, your talents, your degrees, your publications. It can sound kind of stiff, and it is a little bit stiff sometimes, but it's also really important to be able to have this type of bio available. And it's a professional, more of a professional bio. So, it's a little bit, it can be confusing for people switching between these different tones, but I guess I would say, it's the real thing is that what we talked about initially, which is the alignment and the authenticity. Once you have those down, once you're feeling more confident and secure with the language you want to use, then, being able to, basically switch into third person, first person, a more formal or more conversational tone. It's really just like, sometimes you're drawing on the same language, but you're slightly shifting it. And so it's like, what you basically want to do is have a bank of words, a bank of language that you can draw on to craft these different types of bios. Okay, so I'm going to turn the sharing off in a minute, but just want to offer this quote to you guys. Amy Schumer: "I know my worth, I embrace my power. I say if I'm beautiful, I say if I'm strong. You will not determine my story, I will." So I really like that, because bios are actually a story. It's the story of us. And we're the ones who get to tell our story. And this is really a crucial thing. When other people tell our story, they don't get it right. So we need to be the ones. And if you're interested in talking to me more about this, you can sign up for a 1-hour free business visioning consultation. We'll talk more about your bio, but also your business and your writing for your business in general. And there's my link for Calendly and also my email. And I can also put that in the chat. So I think we have about 5 minutes for questions. I will stop the share. Okay, there we go. All right. So yeah, I'd love to take questions. And Tammy and Rachel, if there are questions that have come up in the chat that you want to send my way or bring up, I'm happy to cover those as well. It looks like maybe Jill has a question.
That was from before, but I do want to say, like, I actually had like tears in my eyes earlier. I've had this idea for the teachers retreat for years, and it wasn't the right time. Like, I wasn't in the right physical, mental, emotional place, but I just feel like, thank you, Rise, and thank you for today. I feel like all these people are coming together to help people make their dreams happen.
Yay. Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else come up for people? It could be questions, anything that was felt unclear or that you'd like to have explained a little bit more. Rachel or Tammy, was there anything in the chat that needed to be talked about or that came up?
I think you covered it. I mean, well, you didn't cover everything. I think you got people really thinking, and started, and to have this fertile ground, and just allot the time in our brains to revisit our bio or write a new one is very appreciated. So I think I can speak for everyone when I say that. And I want to give you the opportunity if you want to say anything else to close, and then I'll follow you, Katherine.
Okay. It looks
Erica,
like
you had a
Erica.
question?
Yeah.
Oh, Erica, go, Erica.
So, hi, everybody. This is brand new to me. I do not have a personal bio. I work for the federal government and I was active duty in the Navy for about 6 years. And I absolutely despise writing my own evaluations and beefing up my resume and all of the third person writing. It's hard. It's very, very hard. So I thought, oh, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Why am I going to this workshop? This is not my thing. I'll let you know. The most important point here that I would like to reinforce is what everyone was saying about using the direct language instead of trying to fluff everything up. We're all so burnt out with certain things in our lives right now. I don't want to hear fluff. I want to know what I'm getting myself into and if it's worth my time and my money and my energy, right? Because we all have a lot going on. So thank you for that. Very important. And thank you. I'm really looking forward to this part of my journey, and using my voice a little better in this way. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's actually really interesting to hear you say, I do think people dread writing their bios, like they dread this process. And so it's good to articulate that, like it's a stumbling block. So it's really helpful to hear like how this has pushed you through a bit. Yeah. All right. I think it looks like we don't have any more questions. If you want to close off